Hello and welcome. It is great to have you here. We are streaming live on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and even Twitch. If you're a marketer or an entrepreneur who is determined to tell a story that sells, then boy, do I have a treat for you today. Welcome to our weekly business storytelling stream. That's right. Today, we are going to teach you how to do business storytelling without having to learn any specialist entertainment-based frameworks. That's right. How exciting is that? It's pretty cool, right? Okay, so you know what I mean by these entertainment frameworks? Complex ones, Hero's Journey, Pixar's Tips. You get the point, right? There's all these stages, all these steps, all this lingo that just absolutely doesn't make sense in a day-to-day business sense. Today, we're going to be talking about why that's the case and how you can change what you're doing so you can benefit from the power of storytelling. That's right. So whether you're coming at this completely fresh, you've never tried storytelling in business before, or you're a natural born storyteller and you're looking for some additional oomph, some additional tips to help you be repeatable and consistent in your business storytelling, then I have got something for both of you here today. And we are also going to show how all of this deeply aligns to your business, which the hero's journey absolutely doesn't do. So in the next 60 minutes, my goal is to get you to believe that business storytelling is the absolute key to unrealized business profitability. That's right. I'm going to show you my proprietary frameworks that will make it simple to apply storytelling and to apply storytelling in a way that is deeply connected to your business. As a marketer and entrepreneur myself, I know how much frustration there can be in business. For over 20 years, I was in corporate America with a variety of different marketing roles. I was even chief storyteller for a business division of Microsoft. And for the past 5 years, I've led the charge here at Go Narrative. And that's what we do all day, every day, is help people be business storytellers and to use business storytelling in their business. But for years, even as a passionate storyteller myself, I actually struggled to apply storytelling in business. There's just so much you've got to manage in business, right? You might not feel like you've got time for storytelling. We are going to change that today. You might also think, as a marketer or entrepreneur, that you have to be focusing on all of these different routes to market, all of these different channels, all of these different apps for fear of missing out on an opportunity or for fear of not doing the right thing with your marketing. Got good news for you today. You don't have to worry about all of those different things, no matter what they are or what the flavor of the day is. What you need to get right is your storytelling. And then whatever channel you select, you're going to have a much clearer, stronger message. Right. So like many of you, I once thought that storytelling was reserved for children and books and movies, right? I've always appreciated good storytelling, but my career was really built through science and technology and engineering. I didn't think stories had much to do with business or technology at all. However, I came to learn through my journey that storytelling props everything up in business, for every business, in every industry, internal interactions, internal communications, partnerships, customers, marketing communications, even strategy. Storytelling touches all of these all day, every day. And if you are not equipped with the tools to make the most of this amazingly powerful ability, then you are leaving opportunity on the table. And when you leave opportunity on the table, you are leaving money on the table. And why are we all in business? Okay, so a part of it is to make money. A little bit of a thing that we have to do when we live in a capitalistic society. My mother was a scientist, a biologist focused on virology and zoology. She taught my sisters to ask questions, develop hypotheses, and test our ideas. She taught us to seek facts, data, and truth. She was also a poet and an author. My father reinforced this as an electrical engineer who enjoyed a sales and marketing career in high tech spanning over 5 decades. He actually inadvertently indoctrinated me into the world of technology, Intel specifically. Originally, I grew up surrounded by tales of Silicon Valley, and I highly recommend this book, Accidental Empires. It is an absolute blast, and it charts the very beginning of a lot of the stories that we're all familiar with from Silicon Valley. My father's influence also resulted in me getting a computer science degree. Like I said, right? This doesn't look like it was started off from a storytelling perspective. But we were soaked in story from a very young age. Both my parents read to us voraciously, and I still have this wonderful memory of sitting curled up on the settee with my father and one of my sisters as he read to us The Lord of the Rings. Guess what? This is the actual copy. I still have it. My mother's 1969 edition of Lord of the Rings. And it was actually the first time it was all published in one tome itself. So I took this passion for science. I followed my mother's footsteps into creative writing with 2 novels, and my father's footsteps into technology when I started my career in Intel's marketing department. Any fans of Red Dwarf in the audience? Yes? Okay, fantastic. You will recognize this is Lister from Red Dwarf. And here we are in 2002 at an Intel marketing gaming event at the Science Museum in London that I helped organize. So in the early days of my career, I thought storytelling was best suited for presentations, ad campaigns, and messaging, of course, which it does help with. I didn't explicitly see it as being something that could be used in other areas of the business, and I didn't have a repeatable way of applying it. Something else I discovered in those early years at Intel was Geoffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm, a popular read at Intel. I love how it frames the chasm, how businesses that fail to connect with the early majority fall into that chasm. It really became a North Star for me. If business is about nothing else, it's about connecting your product with the most lucrative of your potential markets so you can make the most money. In the early majority, that's where it is. And storytelling is about connecting people to ideas. People to ideas, people to products. You can see where I'm going with this, right? Without realizing it, I had actually started applying storytelling in my day job. In one of the early instances, I created this superhero theme for a partner account manager training event series at Intel. In another, at Microsoft, I created a James Bond style sales campaign. Eventually, efforts such as these led to me being recruited internally at Microsoft as chief storyteller for Microsoft Dynamics, just as I was about to leave the company. Oh, wow, I thought, it's official. I'm actually going to get paid for storytelling. Finishing those novels can wait. Little did I realize that the journey I was about to embark on would result in me being able to help others unlock a big business secret. It's not about entertainment storytelling at all. Business storytelling may be related to entertainment storytelling, but it's different. And I'm going to share with you why it's different and how to use it. At Intel, an old friend and mentor of mine, Nick Drew, once said to always look for a wheel that's already been invented. Don't reinvent stuff that's already out there. So when I started in this chief storyteller role, I immediately went out there and tried to find a great framework that I could use, that I could apply repeatedly to business. But unfortunately, on the hunt for those existing wheels, I struggled. I just couldn't find one that fit. And I was determined to make this work. Not only had I agreed to stay at the company for this, but I saw this huge opportunity in front of me. I did discover that some people had been using storytelling to cross the chasm. But even then, there was a problem with how they were trying to approach it. Everyone leans into entertainment-based storytelling, things like the hero's journey. Now, to be clear, there are some really fantastic advice and books out there on storytelling. For example, in my exploration, I discovered The Wonderful Resonate by Nancy Duarte. Fantastic advice and presentations. And techniques like Bo Eason's for telling your personal story for impact. As I dug into these various methods and classic storytelling models, I just couldn't find that wheel I was looking for. So these, what really struck me though, as I was doing this, was how these frameworks that I was discovering had been crafted based on entertainment and for that end goal of entertainment. Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, to name but one of these frameworks, can be 10, 12, or even 17 steps. Phrases like rising and falling action, character arc, these are just too much of a heavy lift for busy professionals. No matter how many rabbit holes I went down, I just couldn't find a storytelling wheel that worked for the repeatable application of storytelling in business. As Chip and Dan Heath explain in their wonderful book, Made to Stick, we're all subject to the curse of knowledge. This curse makes it hard for people outside of our area of expertise to understand what we simply get. What is effortless for us is hard work for other people. And guess what? Storytelling was no different. There's a whole bunch of experts out there mired in the curse of knowledge. I'm trying to change that. I'm trying to unlock storytelling for you so that you can apply it in your business every day. So these entertainment storytelling frameworks, they just don't really work in business. I was convinced at some point I might have to invent a new one, but I had a job to do, right? So I decided to be an interpreter. I took those entertainment storytelling frameworks and I translated them and worked with the team to be this kind of living, breathing business storytelling framework myself. And I always made sure that we put the customers at the center with a focus on outside in customer centricity and making sure that that customer was the hero for any journey that we were to take folks on. So my team and I created some terrific customer showcase films that focused on the customer, their experience, and the obstacles that they were seeking to overcome. It reinforced for me the power of storytelling, but it was also reinforcing the issue. Not all content is a big, beautiful video. Not all stories that need to be told are big and bold. The power in story structures isn't just about these big, epic, grandiose gestures of stories. I was discovering more than ever that the power of story wasn't limited to movie and books. Storytelling is about how we as humans connect. And since business is still fundamentally human to human, I realized storytelling plays an essential role in that. Externally, in connecting to customers and partners, and internally connecting individuals together, teams together, thought experiments, problem solving, and much, much more. I was experiencing storytelling's impact on business, but it felt like it was really only just scratching the surface. I wanted to go further than just injecting some elements of storytelling into traditional marketing models. And whilst there is value and use for them, I wanted to go beyond the big, beautiful, epic stories and videos. I started to wonder what actual business storytelling would look like as opposed to entertainment storytelling. I was inspired to take my experience outside of my corporate role and start my own company, to put all my energy into helping you with business storytelling. But I had a young family at home, and my wife was on sabbatical from her career after the birth of our second child. Quitting wasn't an option. Everything changed for our whole family on July the 19th, 2015. Tragedy struck. My parents were both killed in a car crash, and whilst I won't go into any further details into this sad tale, the fact that life is short was never more apparent to me, and unsurprisingly, this became a major turning point in my life. It was against that backdrop of profound grief that I left Microsoft. What on earth was I thinking, right? Well, I honored them in the best way I know how, helping others with their success in business with the power of storytelling. And that's why I founded Go Narrative, to create the business storytelling wheels so that you don't have to. Now, whilst it's true, I did found Go Narrative as a way to help businesses use the power of storytelling, it was really about helping others be successful, in particular, those in technology companies. I love tech, and I want to help amazing technologies that are invented get other people to flourish and to have you be successful in doing so. Marketers and entrepreneurs are a creative bunch. You create amazing stories, amazing content. The problem, though, with being driven and creative is it can result in this check every box syndrome, sort of mashed up with bright, shiny object syndrome. Trust me, I know the latter one particularly well myself. But the truth is you don't need to focus on checking all these boxes or the latest social media channels. What you need is that better storytelling. Remember that big misconception of storytelling, that it's for children, movies and books? It's not. Those are artifacts of what storytelling is really all about. And if some artifacts can be used for entertainment, some can be used for business engagement. When you use storytelling in the right way, you're more authentic, your messaging is better, your executives are more relatable, and your salespeople have increased confidence. You generate increased demand, and you accelerate your sales pipe velocity. And everything is more aligned and has greater integrity, which results in a better customer experience. Sounds good, right? So I had seen this power and I wanted to spread the word. The entertainment frameworks are pretty hard to apply in business, and I want to save you that hassle. But even after initially forming Go Narrative, I actually relied on those entertainment frameworks. I continued to play that storytelling interpreter role, but focused on decoding storytelling in business so I could give that to you. We focused on the concept of what we call the strategic messaging foundation. My product marketing experience fueled our value proposition development, positioning messaging frameworks, personas, customer journeys, and even our content marketing strategy. Selling these things was a great place to start, and we made good money selling it. But my primary objective was unlocking business storytelling. That was our crown jewel that I was pursuing. Literature and film have their complex frameworks, but these are just artifacts of what storytelling really is. They are not storytelling. They are a form of storytelling, okay? And storytelling is more than those artifacts of movies and books. Storytelling is how we actually make sense of the world around us. And you want your customers to make sense of you, don't you? But without simple, practical, repeatable frameworks, all there was these entertainment frameworks. So I decided to continue this role of interpreter. And that's when something interesting happened. The more I practiced the art and the science of storytelling, the more I realized storytelling is a value problem. And business is all about value. For our ancestors, these stories of value were where the poisonous berries were, where the lions were, where the shelter of the clean water was. And evolution did its thing and rewarded with survival the tribes that practiced storytelling. Now, there are a few important things that people get wrong with business storytelling, and I discovered 2 cardinal sins. The first sin is not including people or their transformation. This holds true even when the story is short form content like a tweet or ad copy. I thought back to my time in corporate America. The CMO took this stage. It was a brand new role for him. And he stood up on stage and he said, "We've got a great story for our customers." Everybody leans in. Everybody's really excited. And he goes on about the products. He's like, "Oh, we've got great products, great SKUs, exactly what our customers want." And I'm sitting there thinking, where is the storytelling? There was maybe a few anecdotes peppered in, but there was no real storytelling. There was no structure of storytelling. And it was really just the arguments of what people, why we were a good company to buy from. And the problem is that when you use argument to make a point, you actually encourage your audience to argue with you and to pick apart what you're saying. And what he was talking about was product strategy. It was marketing priorities. It wasn't a story. And by focusing on that logic and argument, that's what he did to the audience to this day where I think about it. And that's the fundamental issue that this cardinal sin number 1 is. And that is that stories are about people overcoming obstacles and the transformation that they experience. This is the why of storytelling. And it is what storytelling means. I've actually considered putting a slide in this deck with a swear word on and saying words are important. Language is important. If somebody tells you they hate you, right, that means something. When somebody says story, it means something. And the term story is abused far and wide. And as a result of that, I honestly think its power in business has become diminished. So the second cardinal sin that I've experienced with storytelling is kind of the flip of that. It's having stories that are just fluffy, not including an element of value. That's really the whole point of storytelling. Like I said about the poisonous berries, this is about delivering a message of value to get people to want to go in a different direction to where they are today. This is about the head as well as the heart. And when you focus on both of these, your audience can then act on that transformation that they've actually seen role modeled in the story for the first time. It's almost simulated like a virtual reality. In fact, when we hear a story, we simulate those events in our minds. It teaches us how to create similar real-world experiences. It shows us how life can be better. And our brain is a wonderful thing. If I had a lemon right here and I sliced it open, maybe I should actually have one every week when we talk about this, and bite into it. Oh, imagine what's going on when you bite into that. Your mirror neurons are firing right now and doing the same thing. You are simulating in your brain what I'm talking about. Now, imagine a story and what a story delivers beyond just the fact of a lemon, right? I love this quote from Jonathan Gottschall. Fiction is an ancient virtual reality technology that specializes in simulating human problems, and then we can learn from them. So as I discovered, it's difficult to apply entertainment storytelling in business. Very much a triangle, peg, round hole kind of situation. You might get so far, but it's far from using it as a repeatable tool every day that you can use to help your business success. But my dream was real. What if I could forge some story frameworks specifically for you that you could use every day? So my mother's earliest memory was her grandfather, my great-grandfather, under pain of death, taking my mother and her two sisters down into his smithy. He was a blacksmith. And in fact, my mother was only 5 years old at the time. My grandmother would not have been happy, right? Their mother. So he helped the girls pick up the hammer and crash it down onto the hot metal, thrust it into the water to temper it, back into the flame, back onto the anvil, and smashing it again as the sparks flew and the smoke filled the air. Forging things takes work. But if you look at that picture, what is there beyond the horseshoe that's being worked on? There's the hammer and there's the anvil. And somebody made those so that the blacksmiths could use them every day. If I can create the anvil and the hammer for you, then you won't have to. And it was through the experience that I'm sharing today that I have forged these frameworks. I was on a mission to find a way to simplify and unlock storytelling in business because those entertainment frameworks are just too damn confusing. And I did it. So excited. So I created a set of tools to enable you to find success through storytelling. And here's the kicker: without relying on any of those entertainment frameworks. They're simple, they're accessible, and they're repeatable. But remember, there's a constant flow of new channels like TikTok and Clubhouse that are hitting you every single day. The reality is, no matter the medium, the message needs to use storytelling if it's going to be effective. So when I was playing that storyteller interpreter role to help our clients, I discovered Paul Smith. I really liked Paul Smith's CAR framework: context, action, results, from Lead with a Story. And I actually used it for quite a while as I was trying to figure out what I wanted our frameworks to look like, because I didn't really feel like CAR was hitting the mark for me as much as I love cars. In the end, my realization was actually quite simple. Stories are like salt. Salt is elemental. Without salt, food is bland. Some people even add it to watermelon and say that they like it. I'm not so sure about that. I prefer to add it to caramel ice cream and have some salted caramel ice cream if I'm going to have a dessert with salt in it. You want your message to be tasty though, don't you? Storytelling makes your messaging and all your communications tastier. I wanted to create a tool as simple as salt, simple to remember, simple to apply, something that anyone can add to their communications dishes. And you know what? None of those tools or channels matters if they're not tasty, quite frankly. And storytelling is that way of bringing tastiness to your communications dishes. So don't over prioritize the channels, prioritize storytelling and then the channels. Now, some of you might be thinking, hold on, Matthew, too much salt is a bad thing. Yes, exactly. And that's the problem with the entertainment frameworks. Seriously, they bring too much salt. There's just too much. They're based on all of this history of books and novels and movies. They're not about business storytelling. They were created for something else, and that's why they fail in business. You might use them for 5 minutes, for 5 weeks, and then they fade into the background. So to prioritize this simplicity, I focused on 3 things. First of all, focus on the customer as the hero, if you will, as I try to move away from these entertainment words and frameworks. We use personas, for example, to guide what those people look like in their experience. Demonstrate the overcoming of challenges by those personas. And then if you do nothing else, focus less on your product. This should be a mantra that you say to yourself every single day. Focus less on the product and more on the people that use your product and how their lives are transformed because of that. That's interesting. Your product is not interesting. I hate to break it to you. Nobody woke up this morning and thought, gotta get me some of whatever product it is, right? So what you need to do is intersect people's stories and get them interested. And the best way to do that is telling stories yourself. So we use this approach along with my storytelling interpreter role as I formed Go Narrative. And we created great content, such as these examples for our clients. We were crafting strategic narratives with an early version of our narrative framework, which I'm going to share with you today. And whilst I was working on crafting these Salt Simple frameworks for business storytelling, I developed this go-to-market playbook, which includes that strategic narrative alongside these more traditional product marketing and marketing communications elements, the value propositions, the positioning messaging frameworks, the content strategy, the personas, all the research that backs this up, and the strategic narrative, plus something really fun in there, which I call reference stories or reverse case studies, which are the case study when you don't have a case study, the story you want to create in the world. So the great thing about all of this is effectively what these components are the components of business storytelling, the value proposition, right? The value problem, the personas, the people, the transformation, how you solve for pain with your product. All of these are feeding into storytelling, but most people don't take it any further. So this work was fantastic because it helped me really rewrite storytelling for business. When our clients use this and use our playbooks, they see real results. A mid-size IT services firm, for example, developed consistency and unity in all their efforts, from marketing to sales to consulting delivery. In another example, a corporate client saw a 40% increase in registrations for their event. That was their primary directive. And another client, landing page improvements. The incoming from search increased by almost 4 times. And then the conversions on that page increased over 7 times. So we're seeing real results by injecting storytelling into a communication strategy. Remember, the whole point of the frameworks that we're going to share with you today was that you could use them and you could repeatedly use them. They're clear, practical frameworks. And there's nothing we love more than helping our clients get their products and their companies to stand out and to find a better way to do that, to make what you say and do interesting. We love helping our clients do this. And we find it through storytelling. Of course, that's no surprise, right? Because our brains are wired for it and our society is actually built on it. So where we live in Seattle, we're surrounded by water. The archipelago of Puget Sound has over 170 islands. My wife and I still fantasized about living on one. So when a property came to sale recently, we booked in to go see it, threw the kids in the car, hopped on the ferry, and went over to the island. It was a new construction, but it had issues. The sellers had run out of money and it showed. There was problems all over. You know, houses take a lot of work anyway. My parents' house was 450 years old, but a house will last 450 years if it's got a good foundation and good bones, a good framework. But if it's not, then it will fail. And the house that we looked at on Vashon Island was peppered with warning signs. And it reminded me that a great framework has these 3 major components. It has a well-built foundation. It's a simple tool, and it can be applied practically and repeatably. And if you get your storytelling right, you don't have to worry about all those channels we talked about, because you'll have a firm foundation and a firm framework. So the right storytelling in business can be used for all of these things. By the way, that house eventually sold for 20% less than it was going for in a market where everything was going up like by 10 or 20%. So storytelling is a communications multi-tool. The good news is you don't need all these different channels. You don't need the entertainment frameworks. Whatever platform you're using, if you use our business storytelling frameworks, the secret that I'm about to share, you will be able to get these types of results in your business. In fact, it's 3 secrets. So one false belief that I hear is that storytelling is a powerful way to communicate. I get it, but I just don't know how to apply it. It's entertaining, but it's too hard to apply. I wish I could. Every time I try and use the hero's journey, I use it for 5 minutes. I overinvest on that to create a presentation or something like that. And then I just stop using it, right? And that leads us to secret number 1, a quick and easy story hack to increase profitability without learning all the nuances of entertainment storytelling. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? So another false belief that I often hear is, okay, I get it. Thank you. I can tell a simple story by applying this framework, but I've got so many features and benefits and the products are just saturating my brain. I don't know a way to create this story that really touches on the right emotions and is engaging because it uses the right emotions. So that leads us to secret number 2, a way to build and confidently tell business stories that connect with the hearts and minds of customers. And there's a third false belief that I hear, and that is, I get it, but I just have these other 2 major issues. One is I just can't get people on board with me. And number 2 is I can't do that because I can't show how this storytelling effort deeply connects to the business. And I get it, because if your initiative or your efforts don't directly connect to the business, especially in a large corporation where you might not have as much flexibility or creativity as at a smaller company, you are going to run into roadblock after roadblock. And that leads us to secret number 3, which is how to figure out the right story to tell to connect your audience, and also to connect all those stories together and to connect those stories to the business. Another word for that is alignment of everything. Okay, so secret number 1. Let's talk about it. Take out your pen, take out your piece of paper, and we are going to talk about the 3D story framework. So remember, I didn't want to go down the entertainment storytelling route. That's the wrong way to go. I wanted to focus on business storytelling, but I couldn't find any sort of how-tos for applying it, right? I couldn't find the wheel that did the job, a wheel that worked for repeatable application of storytelling in business. This sort of framework was not going to cut it. Too much salt, remember? Too much salt. But I knew that if I could forge a salt simple framework, it could become the foundation for not just our client work, but we could also share it with our customers and with the world as we go on a mission to get 100 million business people better at business storytelling. Okay, the good news is that you don't have to go through all the steps that I have gone through. You don't need to read all the books. You don't need to understand the entertainment frameworks. I've done it for you. Now, I did want to make sure that we retained the interest and excitement of the entertainment frameworks. I believe that the right frameworks can facilitate that they're empowering. The stories define our world, and if you have good guardrails, you can be creative within that. And that when you're in control of your company's story, you hold the world in your hands, even if you don't think you're a natural born storyteller. Storytelling is a communications multi-tool for internal alignment, pitching ideas to your boss, exploring product strategy, crafting product positioning, defining the strategic narrative for your company, and of course, your campaigns and your messaging, and even, of course, your advertising. Right foundation will get you beyond just the telling. And whilst Campbell and Snyder wanted to help authors and filmmakers craft stories, I want to help you craft business stories. Your craft is your business. That's your focus. Your craft isn't storytelling, and it shouldn't have to be. And even natural born storytellers can benefit from a structure that's designed for business that helps with that practical application. People should be able to enjoy living in a beautiful home with no worries about the foundation, safe in the knowledge that it was well built. And the frameworks that we've developed for you will give you just that for business storytelling. Okay, are you ready for this first framework? Yes, okay. So here it is. Our first framework, the 3D story framework. 3D, couldn't be easier to remember than that, could it? It's practical and it's straightforward. It helps you see your story from all angles. Nike's Just Do It inspired me. Packing so much into 3 words, right? All that important stuff that it's represented, just 3 words, but so much more than those 3 words. So what are the 3 words of the 3D framework? Desire, difficulty, and a fancy French word called denouement. In a nutshell, people, your hero, right? Your customer want something. That's a desire. But is life easy? We often find that things stand in the way that we have to get over, right? So that's difficulty. And then how we get around that difficulty to get to what our desire is, that is the untangling of the knot. And that's what denouement means in French. And I love that word because it's a beautiful metaphor. This isn't just the conclusion. This isn't just a solution or a product or a service. This is the steps that were taken, how your customer, your hero solved that problem, the results they found, and the learnings they took away. All of that packed into denouement, the untangling of the knot. Now, in my story journey, I knew the importance of contrast, change, and transformation. And I also know that every business decision from big to small is a transformation. And if people could understand the why and the how of another's solution to such a transformation, they could be persuaded to follow the same path, a path to purchase from you. And that is the crux of the power of storytelling in business. So we designed our 3D story framework. I'll make it full screen so you can see it in detail here, to be deceptively simple, a rich microcosm of nuances and details and context packed into those 3 simple words, much like Nike's Just Do It. That means that the more time you spend with this framework, the more you apply it, the more familiar you will get with it, and you will create that rich trove of details, but all stemming from a simple framework. And you will add your own creativity, your own passion, your own product, your own company, and your customer's own transformation to that. For all those years as a story interpreter, I knew if you pulled on the right threads, you'd extract what was needed to construct a story. And that's what the 3D framework does. The story puts you or your customer in the center. And those 3 words do just that. They tease that transformation. And they're presented in such a way that allows you to see all the details and to see more and more as you dig further and further into it. It should come as no surprise. We use a story framework every day in our own business, from our sales conversations to our marketing to when we create a presentation like this. And for our clients, we use it to forge many things. Here's a great example, nice simple example. We'll spend every day on some form of a web page or other. And this is a landing page above the fold copy that utilizes the 3D framework. We also use it as a tool to break down value propositions, to create the trainer guides for our clients' employees, to coach our clients on how to quickly and easily tell stories without the baggage of entertainment-based frameworks. Now, whilst it might be true that we're all some kind of form of a natural-born storyteller, it's also true that spinning a yarn about somebody cutting you off on the motorway is a little bit easier to do than defining the strategic narrative for your whole company. The latter is a little bit more difficult. I love this quote from Ben Horowitz. storytelling is important and it does take work, but we've taken some of that hard work out of the picture for you. With the 3D framework, you have an easy on-ramp to understanding and applying storytelling. I'm so excited because it's simple, right? It means that you can use it every single day. And I would challenge you to start using this framework today and then reach out to me and let me know how your storytelling goes. Finally, we found a way to make storytelling simple for business people. Okay, great. So you've got your story structure down and you're starting to riff off some stories, you're getting confidence, but stories need emotion, right? Remember earlier when I said that's kind of another roadblock for folks, another difficulty is you understand the 3D framework, but then you've got all these product features and all this detail in your heads and you're trying to get it out. Heads, Zaphod Beeblebrox. So you're trying to get the detail out and you leave the emotions on the table and you don't have a way to easily tap into that. That's why we created the Story Meet method so you can meet your customers where they are. Now, whilst this is all sounding very well and good, we want to move our customers to act, and emotions are essential when it comes to moving people. And so one of the things that we hear from folks is that this is a big challenge, and we wanted to help with that, right? Help, it's just too much. I'm trying to figure this out, and how do I bring emotions into it? This is a business, and I'm trying to figure this stuff out. I don't have this kind of repertoire of emotions I can just bring in. I'm not writing stories. I'm not making movies, right? And that's one of the reasons why folks end up giving up on this. I experienced this in my role and time as a story interpreter. And I was worried that the stories we were crafting, even after forming Go Narrative, that they wouldn't have the emotional punch to engage the audience that we were seeking to engage. I agonized over it. I don't want you to agonize over it. When we delivered our first strategic narrative, I was on pins and needles. Would they think that the narrative metaphor that we had chosen of an eagle soaring, would it work? Would it fall emotionally flat? Thankfully, they loved it. Getting to that emotionally resonant place can be hard. It took work. That took a lot of work. We figured a way to make it simple for you. So I was lucky enough in my grandmother's twilight years that she lived near my parents. And so when back 20 odd years ago, beyond that, even when I was at university, I had this wonderful opportunity to see my gran when I came back from university. Now, on those stories that I would tell her from when I was back from university was that I was struggling. I struggled at university. Maybe it's my bright, shiny object syndrome. Maybe it's my dyslexia. Maybe it's my ADHD. Either way, I found university really tough. One time on a visit back home, I stopped off with at my grand's for a cup of tea. Ain't no party like my nana's tea party. Some of you, hopefully in the audience, will get this Flight of the Conchords reference. If you don't, Flight of the Conchords is fantastic, and a whole bunch of interesting stuff came out of it that you might not even be aware of, including some Star Wars stuff. So Matthew, she said, if degrees were easy, they would hand them out after A-levels. A-levels are the last 2 years of high school, right? The equivalent in the UK. But she was right. It made me think of my mother's Forge story. And no, I didn't spill the beans even at that point. I kept my grand's comments in mind. Nothing worth anything is a handout. You have to work for it. But if I could do some of that hard work, if I could create the anvil and the hammer for you, then you're going to be able to get that much further towards business storytelling that much quicker, and you'll have those tools to apply every single day. And that's what I've managed to do with these frameworks, right? And the emotional one is a big one, because you could try using the entertainment frameworks, but they're complicated, right? That you got to learn, you have to become an expert in storytelling to go and apply those. And you're busy, you don't have time to do that, right? And the problem with these big complex frameworks is that they can inadvertently hamper creativity, because you're spending so much energy learning the framework and applying the framework that you don't have energy left over to do the enriching activities. There's 5 primary colors, but just look at all the art in the world. There's 12 notes on a musical scale, but think of all of the beautiful music. With our simple frameworks, including the Story Meet framework, you have these simple, repeatable tools to then go and apply it. So I came up with this framework in the early days of COVID. It all kind of coalesced coalesced for me. And we took all that work we've been doing and distilled it into this framework. We were doing our best, along with the rest of the world, to keep calm and carry on. And we also were trying to be really respectful, extra respectful about how we were coming across, how our clients were coming across. And so it was that inciting incident that really triggered us to develop this framework. And at the time, I was like, okay, I sense a framework coming on. Here it comes. So speaking of emotions, our family loves Star Wars, the originals, prequels, sequels, toys. We have more Star Wars Lego than you can shake a stick at. Our latest arrival this weekend for my eldest's birthday was a TIE fighter. I've even met George Lucas twice, but that's a different story. If you want to hear it, reach out to me offline and I'll share the story. I remember reading an article about the lightsaber battles in Star Wars and how the actors had to learn sword fighting because most of them had never done it before. There's some who had, though. So Christopher Lee, who played the character of Count Dooku. Now, each one of these individuals brings their own emotion, their own character to the sword fighting. And for Christopher Lee, who had been sword fighting for many, many years, in fact, in films before many of us were born, here he is in the 1973's Three Musketeers, and he had this classical style, and he integrated that into his Star Wars character. And to breathe life into a story, you have to infuse the technique and science with character and emotion, just like Christopher Lee did with Count Dooku, the character that he played in Star Wars. The place to start with this is looking at the truths of the transformation that your audience is going through, the change in the world and what it's forcing on your customers. Now, the good news is that we've created a framework for you to do this. We call it the Story Meet Method, and it enables you to meet your customers where they are. Okay. Are you ready for it? Here we go. Let's go ahead and go full screen again so you can see the whole thing. Right. Okay. If you understand what moves people, you can craft things that move them, that result in action. And emotions are a big part of that. With the morals, essential emotions, and truth framework, you don't need to think about all those steps of the hero's journey to prospect for the things that your customers care about. It's a simple hack to help you find those right emotions in your stories. So morals, these are your customer's perspective, the good, the bad, or the indifferent. You can also think of values as a part of this as well. Essential emotions, these are the feelings that exist for your audience around the topic. And the truths are the concepts that the audience holds dear and central to their decision-making, regardless of what the topic is. The meat method is your iceberg hack to bring those emotions into business. Now, not all emotions are created equal. And just focusing on happiness or sadness or fear, uncertainty or doubt, which is popular to talk about in business, they're not specific enough. You have to look at the context of your audience. And as you start to do that, you realize it's not necessarily an easy job. But you want to look for the morals and values that are shaping a business's culture, office locations, affiliations, donations, even collaboration culture within the company. Think about the businesses out there in the world that are criticized nowadays because their CEO or founder is of a particular religion that makes a particular type of donation. This sort of thing is essential and a big part of how we as humans operate. And guess who's running the businesses still? Humans. The robots aren't doing it just yet. So emotions essentially ooze out of all business interactions, right? Success, elation, competition, fear. You've got career snafus, right? That terrified you've made a mistake in your job, said something stupid to your boss, or excitement for collaboration and ideation. Truths, they frame up a business. Things are just a certain way sometime. This can be affected by the industry, the founders, the headquarters country, and much more. But what are those truths? If you start pulling on the thread with the meat framework, you'll start to unravel what that is. You might not find a moral that's particularly relevant, but you might find a collection of essential emotions. So by going through these steps in this framework, it uncovers that all for you, and you'll unravel the cardigan of complex emotions in no time. Emotion leads to empathy. Empathy leads to engagement. And engagement leads to amazing customer experiences. That kind of sounds a little bit like a Star Wars quote from Yoda, doesn't it? Anger leads to pain, pain leads to suffering, suffering leads to sadness, the dark side, something like that. I should know the quote, shouldn't I? I have to go practice it so I can tell it to my kids later. So this is a sort of quote that we just live for at Go Narrative. When we have this type of impact, that's another thing about the emotions in the business, right? Is that you want to have a positive experience, and you're going to have that positive experience if you can take people on a journey. Okay, so we've covered off how to tell a simple story, how to bring some emotions into that story to make it engaging. And we also talked about the false belief of, how do I align all these stories together? How do I align my team to these stories? How do I align these stories to my business, right? If they're not aligned, they're not going to go anywhere, right? And trying to go down this route, it really helps if you've got a framework for it. And that's about the time that I really started to look into the why of business storytelling, right? I was trying to figure this out. And seriously, if this is an experience I went through, go and Google storytelling and hit I'm lucky, right? What will pop up will probably be this HubSpot article. Don't read it just yet, save it for later. Now, not to throw HubSpot under the bus, but when you read it later, you'll notice a few things. Not only is there not a single story in there, it's not structured on story, there's no story to it at all. I'm sure you're realizing the mission that I'm on now to get 100 million business people as better storytellers, right? Because it's just not being used, and it's not being used to describe storytelling. Talk about epic fail, business community, right? The power of story goes so far beyond just the content of storytelling or just the telling. We can use it to shape the world. So in January of 2017, I was sitting with my wife on the sofa, and we're trying to figure out what we were going to call the company. And I landed on Go Narrative for two reasons. First of all, go, action, business, selling, right? This is about driving action. But why narrative? And why narrative related to storytelling? Well, this 3D story framework is great for crafting stories. The story meet's great for emotions. How do you create that alignment to the business? Well, the thing is that this is kind of the paradox of storytelling, is that storytelling isn't about the storytelling, right? It's beyond that. And beyond storytelling, there's something called narrative, and it's the big picture, okay? So think your favorite movie, for example, actually includes a collection of stories that all accrue up to an overall narrative for that film. But I had two fundamental questions. Firstly, how do you create authenticity by tying all of these stories together, right? That alignment that we talked about, with a golden thread that ties it all together. But it also led me to another and potentially even more profound question. How do you ensure the stories you tell are the right stories? That would be wasted energy if they're not the right stories, right? Stories that matter for your business and drive action whilst being authentic and feeding that authenticity. I hope you're starting to see that businesses have a different demand on storytelling than movies and books. In the early days of solving the business storytelling problem, I was hooked, right? I spent so much time geeking out on storytelling. You might recall how I kept running into problems, trying to get the business to benefit from it, and I played that interpreter role. And I remember trying to get my general manager to remember all the stages of the hero's journey. It didn't go well. I don't recommend it. Don't do that. Most business people are just too busy. They've got too much on their plate. So if it's not immediately obvious how it can benefit the business, their eyes glaze over, the blinkers go on, and they go back to something that's safe for them. So how do you connect the storytelling to the business and respect that big picture? Seems like a tall order. You might be wondering, how do I get started doing that? And this is the most important part of storytelling in business beyond any simple frameworks. And it's the paradox, again, of storytelling in business. And the paradox is really all about the fact that storytelling that's not the be all and end all of it. The telling is only one part. And if you just focus on the telling, not only will you not get the most out of story, you won't find a way to deeply connect it to your business, which is essential. The driving force behind storytelling is how our brain works, and specifically how it works getting along and getting ahead in society, as Will Storr says in his wonderful book, The Science of Storytelling. Now remember, even with this thing as natural and as simple as salt, right, that we still manage to spill it over. It's still tricky because we're trying to use these entertainment frameworks. And as such, people only dabble, put a little bit of story in, inject a bit of story, and that's it. I love this quote. You can't see the label from inside the jar. I want to help you get out of the jar to see what storytelling really is all about, and then get into the business storytelling jar. Think about your favorite film for a second. There's all these different stories that accrue up to the narrative, right? I recently showed the kids The Wizard of Oz, and I'm in the process of reading the 16 books to my youngest. I didn't know there was 16 Wizard of Oz stories, the Land of Oz, right? In the original Wizard of Oz, the narrative is that one's true purpose is found within oneself. Pretty cool, right? And if you look at Dorothy's, there's no place like home. There's no place like home. Where was she all along? Turns out she was actually at home. The stories of the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion also accrue to that. The Scarecrow wanted brains, but he's the one who's always solving the problems. The Tin Man wanted a heart, but he's the one who's showing compassion. And the Lion wanted courage, and he's the one who's standing up and defending the adventurers on their journey. They had what they sought all along. And this is what that story stood for, the metaphor of that what your purpose is found within yourself. Think of a brick wall, okay? Now imagine instead of that, all those bricks, there was one thin, tall piece of fired clay. That never happens. And it happens for a reason. It's because if you do that, it's weak. When you take all the bricks and you connect them with mortar, it's strong. It's to do with how all the forces for each of those bricks are acting on all the other bricks around it. Narratives are like mortar. They hold all your stories together, and together they're stronger. What makes up the mortar? How do you figure that out? It's the meaning of a business. So if we can draw out that meaning, we can then craft a narrative and use it as a shortcut, just like the Wizard of Oz did with the storytelling, and that your true purpose is found within yourself, a shortcut to understanding. What insights come from places like employees, customers, partners, your founders themselves? How do those relate to the changing world that's out there? Trends, facts, hopes, dreams of your customers. How does it relate to the transformation that's going on in the world? The pressure that transformation is exerting on people, how they navigate to success. So these are all the raw materials for themes and connections that inform a narrative. This is more than storytelling. And this is the problem with the paradox. People see it as just for the telling, just to be entertaining. It's why most people only get so far as applying it to maybe a presentation, right? Or some content. They don't see it as something that is deeply connected to the business. What is the story of your business? Ponder that question for a second. What if you had a way to guide your leadership team through developing a narrative and implementing a strategic narrative in a language that makes sense to them, that helps the whole business benefit from the power of storytelling? And that's what I was able to uncover, a way to create a strategic narrative rooted in the business. Again, not having to memorize all of these complicated entertainment frameworks in the hero's journey, getting more out of storytelling for business than presentations or some messaging. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Because you can. The framework is the TRIPS storytelling methodology. So we were able to use this narrative framework as a way to, and we do every day, to X-ray the inside of a business from the outside in. So we do it with our clients. For someone who had been championing customers and outside in thinking for decades, this makes a lot of sense, and it probably makes a lot of sense for you. If you can see the business and break it down into a framework rooted in storytelling, you then have the tool to create the narrative for your business. And this is a secret that ties all of that together. Now, the fact is your company's strategy is deeply linked to your story. I love this Ben Horowitz quote. He mentioned several of these types of things in The Hard Thing About Hard Things. In good companies, the story and the strategy are the same thing. Okay? He goes out to say that the output of everything that your company then does is that story. And you know what? That story intersects and affects the stories of the lives of your customers. So if your story needs a strategy, my question for you is your strategy complete? Okay. Are you ready for the framework? This is the last framework we're going to go on through today. Super excited to share it. With the TRIPS storytelling methodology, you can do all of this. TRIPS is an acronym. So let's have a look at what it stands for. So TRIPS stands for transformation. That's the T, okay? What change is going on in the world? How is that affecting companies, governments, organizations, companies, individuals, right? How is that affecting your customer? This is the why that you're embarking on solving with your new products, with your new campaign, whatever it happens to be. It's essential. Nobody does anything in business without trying to change something. Otherwise, it's just the same and you don't need to buy anything. Pretty simple when we say it like that, right? Okay, what does R mean? R is reasons to believe. So we've got this, we've identified this transformation. There's a head and a heart to this. So show me the facts, show me the trends, show me the proof that this transformation is real. Okay, that's legit. Also, based on this transformation, how does that affect people's motivations, their hearts, right? Their aspirations, what they want to do. If your audience has an objective of changing their life in a way that is going to make them happier, that is a really good reason to believe. And so there is the head and the heart to reasons to believe. Don't forget that. The I is for innovation. Okay, this is your secret sauce. This could be a feature, a particular product, a service. Amazon, for example, their quote unquote killer feature or innovation was how they approach customer service. It doesn't have to be a feature or a product. It can be a part of the culture of the company, but it's that pinnacle. What's really special about you? By the way, positioning work, very important to map the pains and the specific capabilities so that you can solve people's questions when they get deeper into making a decision, especially for an enterprise software product or something complicated like that. But here we're talking about what is that pinnacle, the motivating force behind why you do what you do. Now, P is for problems, okay? The transformation imposes problems. That's the first type of problem. Secondly is, how do I get going solving for this problem? That's the second one. The third one is, now I'm on my journey, roadblocks are going to crop up in the way. How do I solve for those? It's kind of going deeper than that idea of difficulty from the 3D methodology. And the S is for stories. Don't just figure the stuff out that I told you about just now. Find a story that represents each of those. Transformation. Is there a story about how something went terribly wrong for somebody, right? A reason to believe. Is there a story about how somebody succeeded and what they got? This could be existing customers. This could be social proof. This could be a case study or a case story. And innovation could be the founding of your company, for example. So find stories that represent all of this good stuff, okay? So you could always roll the dice, but you don't have to anymore. You no longer need to cross your fingers and pray that you have the secret to doing storytelling right every single time and doing it in a way that is aligned to your business, and all those stories are pulling in one direction together. When you craft a narrative with a TRIPS storytelling methodology, you will frame your strategy and transformation, how it relates to the market, and you'll harvest the proper inputs for your stories, and you'll have a golden thread or that mortar that ties everything together. Then you can take our 3D story framework and craft stories around that. And you can take our story meat framework and you can make sure that those stories have emotion and are engaging. The TRIPS storytelling methodology is our North Star for outside in focus, consistency, alignment, repeatability. In our business, we use this internally and externally all the time. Internally, we use it to shape our own narrative and to guide the work we do for our clients. Externally, we use it to do that X-ray, to diagnose our client's narrative, to help draw it out and figure it out. We'll run workshops to extract insights. We'll interview clients to do the same. And then we'll use those inputs to identify cultural and meta narratives that can be used as a shortcut to understanding. Just like the yellow brick road is a metaphor for finding your true purpose. And all of that accelerates understanding and gets people going on a journey with you to a new destination, which hopefully includes your product, right? So these narrative metaphors, along with the foundation and the stories, they accrue in our strategic narrative. It is the golden thread. It is the one ring that binds them all together. I love being able to refer back to Lord of the Rings, which I shared at the beginning of this conversation. One ring to bind them all. So after we applied these frameworks, we saw our deal sizes exploded, right? And the engagements included more of our deliverables in the strategic narrative, which is incredibly potent. And I'm absolutely thrilled. My journey on storytelling went from like entertainment stories, the hero's journey, through brain science, the cogs of society. I learned storytelling wasn't just to do with the telling of stories, right? Or even just a way of being interesting and engaging, as important as that is. I learned that there is a process that is fundamentally linked to how our brain works, how we see the world, our reality, which is essentially what we're talking about here, and shaping the reality of our customers. Storytelling is how we communicate and even how we can solve problems, and it fuels our lives and the businesses we run. I also learned how to align the narrative to the business and to create a narrative that connects to a human understanding of the world and as a bridge to your product or service. I learned how to use these narratives to intentionally create stories that align and inspire people to act. And again, act to do what? Hopefully to buy your product or service. Now, you've got the key. You've got the secret to unlock storytelling for business. You'll create energy and interest for your program, your campaign, your company, even your storytelling initiative itself. You'll build alignment. You'll get people on board. You'll get customers to act. It's on that energy that you can engineer large-scale, meaningful narratives and campaigns that convert and trigger the right mix of hormones and brain reactions at scale. And when you do that, you can engineer large-scale change in the world. Do you want to change the world, even if just a little bit? This is storytelling for action. Okay, let me ask you a question. If you followed what I showed you in secret number 1, got better at telling stories. And secret number 2, told stories with passion that connected with emotions. And secret number 3, told stories that aligned together, aligned all your employees together, aligned to the business, and aligned to everything you said and did. Do you think you could maybe generate more demand and accelerate your sales pipe? Possibly, right? How many of you are feeling excited about that? How many of you are feeling like you're drinking from a bit of a fire hose? I get it. There's a lot. We've covered a lot today. I had some presentation training once that said, your job in a presentation isn't to try and get all of the information across. It's about to get people to take a next step. And I hope that what I've shared with you today is going to get you to want to take that next step, to get better at storytelling in business so that you can bring all of those benefits to your business. And if you can take these ideas and run with it, that's awesome. Of course, we'd love to help you. So this is why we are launching the Storytelling for Action pack. And here it is. Okay, so this is packed full of everything we've covered today, how to apply it, frameworks, process flows. Here's a little bit of a sneak peek about what you'll see within this kit. We've got 6 playbooks. We've got how-to flows. There's over 300 hacks to get you going and get you thinking practically about applying storytelling in business. And we'll also throw in some additional worksheets that you can use with your team. We've created a community where you can ask questions to us at any time of the day. When we're awake, we'll answer them, and lifetime access to that clinic, and but little bonus, which is a customer advocacy program kit as well. Okay, so to sign up to be one of the first people to hear about this, go to gonarrative.com/SFA. That's storytelling for action. If you're entrepreneurs or marketers or executives looking to get attention, be heard, and sell more, this will help you. It'll help you challenge the status quo to find a better way to clarity. So go ahead, go sign up now at gonarrative.com/SFA, and you will be one of the first people to hear about it as soon as it releases. And we're in the process of releasing it right now. You'll also get a bonus. You'll get our weekly storytelling tips newsletter. So you'll get a constant flow of ideas and tips on how to apply storytelling in business. Fantastic. Okay, so we have time for Q&A. If you're available till 11:30, of course. If you had to go at 11, then you might want to run off. But we have an opportunity for questions here. So let's see if we have any Q&A. You can post a comment, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and we will see it right here. So we'll see if any questions pop up. Okay, we've got one here. Why don't you have heroes or things like that in your framework? It's actually embedded in the desire of the 3D framework. Remember, we're trying to avoid the entertainment storytelling frameworks. We will use them as metaphors. We'll talk about movies as metaphors, as a shortcut to understanding to help take you on the journey. But we don't talk about that within our frameworks themselves because we're focused on helping you from a business perspective. So the idea of a hero, your customer, your audience, that fits within that D of desire. Okay, what's the difference between transformation and change? Okay, but they're clearly related, right? We think of transformation as being the bigger picture and change as being the change that people have to go through. Now, of course, big scale change, small scale change. But if you think about transformation as being that kind of big scale and change as being small scale, individual or even organization, that will help you with that. What do I need to learn or remember about the hero's journey? Nothing. Zilch, zero. Never have to think about that again. Unless you want to get into the curse of knowledge of storytelling, which I have done, then of course, go geek out on that stuff. But we have created these storytelling frameworks for you to apply in business, so you don't have to worry about that stuff. You sure mention movies and books a lot for somebody that says you shouldn't be using entertainment frameworks. It's the same thing, right? We use it as a shortcut to understanding. That's it. Okay, let's see. Time for one more. What's the biggest mistake people make when they try going on this journey? I'd say there's two, really. It's like I said with that CMO example. One is not actually doing storytelling, thinking you're doing it, saying the word, but not doing it. That's the first mistake. The second mistake is actually just telling fluffy stories and stories that don't have some value and aren't moving people to act in a meaningful way for your business. And again, it's the head and the heart of storytelling together as one. We want to move people to act, and they have to act, otherwise there's no point. So making sure that your stories are closely aligned to the action that you're trying to get people to take by sharing how their life can be better after that transformation and how they get through it, and ultimately that's what storytelling is all about. Value. Okay, and we use it, like I said earlier on. The tribes that survived out of all the humans throughout history who no longer exist, the tribes that survived and came out of the plains of Africa are the ones that survived, and the ones that survived use storytelling as a communications tool. Brilliant. Okay, so thank you so much for joining. We actually do this every week, so you can come back, you can get a refresher, come ask your questions then. But of course, go and sign up for at gonarrative.com/SFA, and you'll be the first to hear about Storytelling for Action, and you'll get our regular weekly storytelling tips. So you'll get plugged in, and hopefully you'll join me on the mission to get 100 million business people using storytelling in business every single day. Thank you so much for joining. Wishing you an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. And with that, we shall sign off.